The man just pushed open the door, only to find his wife in an intimate embrace with another man at home, and the man on the bed was none other than the famous god Zeus. Furious, the king decided to execute the defiled queen and their illegitimate child. Unwilling to endure such a great humiliation, he ordered his wife and child to be put into a coffin together and thrown into the sea. After a bout of cursing, the king was struck by Zeus's thunderbolt. The arrogant king instantly turned into a monster and was never heard from again. But the fate of the child in the coffin did not end there. After floating in the vast sea for 3 days and 3 nights, no one expected that he would be picked up by a fisherman. At the moment the fisherman slowly opened the coffin, he wore an expression of disbelief. Lying inside were a dead woman and a crying baby. He regarded this as a gift from the gods and decided to raise the child. Little did he know that this act of his would save the entire human world in the future. 12 years later, the family went out to fish as usual. The father, with sharp eyes, suddenly noticed something unusual under a statue. A group of soldiers seemed to be destroying the statue of Zeus. They rose up, pushed the statue into the sea, and blew the horn of rebellion, declaring war on the gods once again. Suddenly, dark clouds gathered, thunder and lightning crashed, and waves in the sea began to surge. A horde of bat-like monsters burst out of the sea and quickly attacked the soldiers. In an instant, all the soldiers were wiped out. Suddenly, the bat monsters intertwined and revealed their true form. Hades, the god of the underworld, came to the human world again to punish humanity. While the fisherman's family was watching this strange scene in fear, Hades transformed into a ball of black fire and launched a devastating attack on them. The sailboat was instantly torn to pieces in a violent explosion, and the 4 members of the family sank to the seabed along with the boat. However, Perseus tried his best to rescue his family, but everyone was trapped inside the sailboat and he couldn't open it in time. Perseus held on until the end, but failed to save a single person. He couldn't hold his breath any longer and chose to give up, swimming to the shore alone. Upon receiving the news, Zeus flew into a rage. He had long endured humanity's unjust treatment of the gods. He proposed that this time, humans must pay a heavy price to atone for their sins. On the other side, Perseus was taken to the empire of Argos by soldiers. Having lost his family, he had no home to return to. When the soldiers learned that he was the only survivor at the scene, they decided to take him to the palace for the king's judgment. The moment they pushed open the palace door, it was like entering another world. The outside was like a living hell, while the inside was a completely different scene. People in the palace were feasting and reveling day and night, even cheering for the soldiers who had just toppled Zeus's statue. The queen made arrogant remarks that offended the gods. The splendid palace suddenly dimmed. Wisp after wisp of black smoke converged from all directions to the center, with sparks flying in the terrifying dark cloud. Suddenly, the dark cloud spun rapidly, sweeping up and devouring all the soldiers present. Only Perseus was immune to its magic. Hades, the god of the underworld, revealed his true form. Hades came to the human world specifically to warn everyone, telling them that humans were as tiny as dust under the nails of the gods. All human lives were a gift from the gods, and challenging the authority of the gods would surely come at a price. Hades walked up to the queen and, with just a glance, turned her into a centenarian in an instant. Faced with such powerful magic, everyone dared to feel anger but dared not speak out. Hades spoke harshly, saying he would show humans the power of the gods. He threatened that in 10 days, when the eclipse occurred, he would release the sea monster to raze the entire kingdom to the ground, including everyone in it. Of course, Hades also gave humans a chance to redeem themselves unless they were willing to offer the princess as a sacrifice to the sea monster. Only the princess's blood could save humanity. He also lied that this was an order from Zeus, wanting everyone to harbor hatred towards Zeus. Once Zeus lost the prayers of humans, he would grow weak. For Hades, it would be easier to seize power from Zeus in the future. Before leaving, he deliberately revealed that Perseus was a demigod. Perseus was captured and tortured, forced to confess his true purpose in coming to the human world. The king rushed over and stopped their reckless behavior. He didn't do this to save Perseus or seek forgiveness from the gods, but because he didn't want to sacrifice his daughter to the sea monster. If Perseus was really a demigod, he must have a way to save humanity. Perseus claimed that he was just an ordinary mortal, not a god. All his family members were also harmed by the gods, and he hated the gods deeply. As a fisherman, he only knew how to weave nets, not how to wield a sword. Perseus was imprisoned as an outcast until a mysterious girl came to visit him in the cell. Her name was Io. She had a similar experience to Perseus, except that she was cursed with immortality. 20 years ago, after Perseus was thrown into the sea by the king, It was Io who secretly escorted him to the fisherman's family. All along, she had been watching over Perseus as he grew up, hoping that he would overthrow the tyrannical rule of the gods and save humanity. Only by killing the sea monster would there be a chance to defeat Hades. The general immediately assembled his troops to escort Perseus. What they needed to do now was to find the three fates, who knew everything, and must ask them for the way to kill the sea monster. On the other side, in a cave, a mysterious man in a black robe was drinking alone. Hades walked over to him slowly, saying that they had a common enemy, his own brother, the god Zeus. It turned out that this man was the former king who had been humiliated by Zeus. Hades told him that the illegitimate child was still alive. Hades infused some of his divine power into the man, allowing him to use it to kill Perseus. The expedition team traveled over mountains and rivers, finally stopping to rest in a secluded spot. All along the way, Io had been secretly following Perseus, protecting him from the shadows. Suddenly, the white horse, frightened by something unknown, became instantly agitated. Abruptly turning around, a winged black horse descended from the sky and stood beside it. Io, a companion, walked over slowly. When she stroked it, the horse became extremely docile. She told Perseus that this was a warhorse gifted to him by the gods. Just as Perseus couldn't wait to step forward to touch it, the expedition team was attacked by unknown monsters. Perseus rushed over to rescue his companions, but it was too late. An ugly, ferocious-looking half-orc launched a targeted attack on Perseus. It turned out that he was the puppet king who had been humiliated by Zeus earlier. He hated Zeus's illegitimate son so much that he wanted to tear him to pieces. Perseus was kicked down the hillside, rolling non-stop. The half-orc chased him frantically. Before Perseus could react, the half-orc, using his charging momentum, wielded a sharp sword and launched a fatal strike at him. Perseus reacted quickly, dodging the attack, and immediately picked up a fallen sword to counterattack. After only 2 blocks, he was bitten on the arm by the frenzied half-orc. Unable to bear the pain, he let out a heart-wrenching scream. At the critical moment, his companions rushed over to help. The general was the first to charge forward, attacking the half-orc, but unexpectedly, he was directly bounced off by the half-orc's solid armor. They were no match for the half-orc at all because Hades, the god of the underworld, had infused magic into his body. Hades also wanted to use the puppet king to eliminate Zeus and his illegitimate son. Another soldier's helmet was crushed to pieces in the half-orc's hand. Perseus, sitting on the ground, was picked up by the hand. Just as the half-orc was about to end his life, the general acted decisively, chopping off the half-orc's hand with a sword. Seeing that he was at a disadvantage, the half-orc could only roar to vent his anger. After venting, he chose to flee, planning to seek revenge another day. The others had no intention of letting him escape and quickly followed. At this time, the severed palm actually grew 3 feet and fled back to him. Following the half-orc's bloodstains, the group arrived in a desert area. The half-orc was surrounded by them and knocked to the ground with a stick. Just as the half-orc was about to fight to the death with them, the black blood from his arm dripped onto the desert and was instantly swallowed by some kind of monster. They immediately sensed something was wrong and began to retreat. Suddenly, the arm of a desert behemoth burst out of the sand, and a huge desert crab attacked them. They had no time to discuss and hastily picked up their weapons to counterattack the giant crab. In the battle, 2 of the crab's legs were cut off, and the enraged crab fought more fiercely. The general and others, who had just arrived, were also shocked by the scene in front of them. Before they could draw their swords, they were thrown away by the crab's tail. Perseus was bound to a pillar by the huge pincers. When the crab raised its tail to strike, Io arrived in time and saved him with a flying rope. The provoked crab immediately turned its attention to Io, launching a fierce attack on her in a fit of rage. Her small figure obviously had no ability to resist, and she could only find a way to survive on the edge of life and death. Perseus rushed over and saved her. On the other side, the general, holding 2 swords, jumped onto the crab's back and stabbed hard at its tail. He hurriedly shouted for his companions to pass him a javelin to deliver another blow. It was impossible to get the javelin under the crab's feet. Seeing the javelin right in front of him, the crab decisively stepped on his body. Fortunately, a companion who came from the other side got the javelin. Perseus and Io were still being chased by another crab, and the few who had just defeated the crab quickly came to help. Seeing that they were about to be caught up, Perseus immediately threw Io behind a statue, and he chose to stay alone to hold them back. As the billowing dust slowly dispersed, the desert crab lay on the ground motionless. Perseus's fate was unknown. Just as everyone was blankly checking the anomaly ahead, they saw that he had escaped danger, and everyone breathed a sigh of relief. However, The danger did not end here. From all directions in the distance came even larger desert scorpions than the previous one. They were completely surrounded with no way out. Just as everyone picked up their weapons and prepared to fight to the death, a huge roar came from the distance. A mysterious man in a blue robe raised his left hand and muttered incantations to the desert scorpions. The three crabs actually stopped in their tracks and ceased their attack. The experienced soldiers recognized these ghosts at a glance. It turned out they were desert wizards called evil spirits. A long time ago, the Legion had fought a battle with them. Their withered bodies and eyes glowing blue clearly indicated that they were no longer human. They couldn't tell whether they were enemies or friends. Perseus, ignoring everyone's dissuasion, insisted on stepping forward to negotiate with them. Suddenly, his injured arm felt a sharp pain, and the venom in his body quickly spread from his arm, eroding his body. The severe pain made him unable to help lying on the ground. Io wanted to step forward to help, but unexpectedly, her palm was scalded. It turned out that Perseus had been bitten during the fight with the Puppet King. The general said that the venom at this time made him quickly pray and let his father, the god Zeus, come to help. This magical venom was passed by Hades, the god of the underworld, to the Puppet King, and only the divine power of Zeus could neutralize this kind of highly toxic poison. Perseus would rather die than submit to the gods. The evil spirit wizards took them to their tent to rest. Perseus's injury became more and more serious, and the severe poison in his body made his high fever persist. Just when Aid left to get water and was out of sight, the evil spirit wizard secretly sneaked into the tent to check his injury. He gently waved his staff to ignite will-o'-the-wisps, then grabbed a handful and applied it to his arm. Perseus suddenly let out a scream of severe pain. The companions outside, hearing the noise, quickly came to stop him, but were pushed away by the evil spirit wizard. They picked up their weapons and fought with him. They completely didn't trust the evil spirit who had joined them halfway and didn't know his purpose. But the two were no match for the evil spirit wizard at all. After a few rounds, they were knocked to the ground by the evil spirit wizard. The evil spirit said something to them that they couldn't understand at all. But Io, who was also a demigod, could actually understand their language. Through Io's translation, they learned that it turned out that they had been cursed by the gods and thus became evil spirits. For many years, they had been waiting for the one who could save them. The evil spirit expressed his willingness to help Perseus overthrow the rule of the gods. Only in this way could they lift the curse on their people. During the conversation, Perseus stood up, and the venom on his hand miraculously began to dissipate and return to normal. The next day, the general found Perseus angrily, gave him a scolding, and blamed his arrogance for killing so many brothers. As a demigod, he should accept the power bestowed on him by the gods. If Perseus had accepted the ancient sword and Pegasus given by the gods, several brothers would not have paid the painful price of their lives. Just as everyone broke up unhappily, the evil spirit wizard came to them riding a desert scorpion. With the help of the giant scorpion, they finally arrived at the ruins of an ancient city. This was the back garden of the Styx. Once, the sea monster defeated the Titan god here. They walked from dusk to night before reaching the top of the mountain. Suddenly, there was lightning and thunder in the sky, and dark clouds were dense. The flickering scene faintly exuded a dark atmosphere. With each step, the tense atmosphere became more and more intense. Perseus threw a torch on the oil well pit, illuminating the entire night sky. A monster with a palm growing on it suddenly appeared in front of them. Three hell witches walked towards them and launched an attack. Their faces were blurred and their appearances were astonishing, making people shudder. It turned out that the three monsters were the hell witches they were looking for. Io told Perseus to let down his guard and directly ask them for the answer. The witches said that if they wanted the answer, they must offer a sacrifice in exchange. The two sides started fighting as soon as they disagreed. In desperation, Perseus grabbed an eyeball with one hand and threatened the witches to throw it off the cliff. The eyeball was their lifeblood. Without it, they could not insight into and explore more knowledge. Perseus seized their weakness and questioned the witches about the way to kill the sea monster. The witch directly said the name of Medusa, the Gorgon. Any flesh and blood that looked into her eyes would turn into fossils. No one could escape her eyes, not even the sea monster. She was imprisoned on the Styx on the edge of the underworld. Medusa had a violent temperament, and no one had been able to tame her so far. Perseus still decided to go to see this Medusa. Before leaving, the Hell Witches asked Perseus if he wanted to hear their prophecy. Half-Red El advised Perseus not to listen, but he ignored everyone's dissuasion and listened to the witch's prophecy. The witch told Perseus that he would be killed by Medusa's gaze, which was an unchangeable fact because that was how history was written. After they left, they set off again on the journey to the boundary of the Styx, because they believed the prophecy. several hunters became timid and left the expedition team. Just as everyone was resting, his father Zeus turned into an old man and found him. He advised Perseus not to take the risk of dying, because no one could defeat the sea monster, let alone Hades. He urged Perseus to return with him to Mount Olympus, but Perseus would rather live and die with humans than seek the protection of the gods. He rejected all the help Zeus offered. Helpless, Zeus tossed a coin for the underworld to Perseus, telling him the ferry fare across the Styx would be expensive. They crossed the lofty mountains again and finally reached the entrance to the Styx. Mist shrouded the road ahead, making it impossible for them to see how far the opposite bank of the Styx was. The only way was to wait for Charon, the ferryman of the underworld, to appear, for only he could ferry them across. But Charon only transported the dead. In desperation, Perseus held the underworld coin. Torn between swimming across or waiting, the experienced evil spirit wizard grabbed the coin and tossed it onto the lake. Upon receiving the coin, Charon emerged slowly from the mist. Two ghosts rose from the water, dragging the boat with chains to greet them. With Charon's help, they successfully reached the abandoned castle where Medusa was imprisoned. The place was eerie and terrifying, and only men were allowed inside. Io had to wait outside for their triumphant return, but rumors said no one had ever walked out alive. Perseus led several warriors into the fiery ruins, where remnants of those petrified by Medusa's gaze lay everywhere. Perseus warned everyone to keep their eyes down. Just as the general glanced at the abyssal lava, a surge of flames erupted toward them. Suddenly, a burst of laughter echoed in their ears. Lingering on and on, the atmosphere of conspiracy grew heavier. A poisoned arrow suddenly struck them. In the fall, the injured warrior accidentally dragged several companions down. At the critical moment, Perseus stuck a knife into a pillar and managed to pull the evil spirit wizard. Another warrior fell into the lava. The general, hit by the poison arrow, told two companions to leave quickly, choosing to stay to buy time for Perseus. Perseus used his great strength to fling the evil spirit wizard ashore. Just then, Medusa's tail began to emerge. The mocking laughter kept provoking them. Medusa moved like a ghost, appearing and disappearing without a trace. The two warriors were overcome with fear, daring not to look up. As they reminded each other to keep their eyes down, Medusa appeared behind one of them. The man couldn't resist, glancing up at Medusa's face. In the next second, he turned into a stone statue. The scene shocked his companion. Medusa was like a ghost, her movements unpredictable. No one knew where she would appear next. The man fell into a panic, crying out for his companions, but the cry drew Medusa to him. Perseus was equally shocked to see his companion's shattered body. Faced with Medusa's taunting laughter, he formulated a plan. Medusa, holding a bow, walked with a seductive gait, exquisitely enchanting. She searched for her target. After the two plotted, Perseus prepared to lure her out. Hearing the noise, Medusa shot an arrow at him, roaring as she began to chase Perseus frantically. In her domain, no one could escape her pursuit, but she didn't know it was a trap set by Perseus. Perseus ran with all his might, daring not to look back. He leaped across to the opposite bank, then weaved through pillars. When Medusa focused on Perseus, the evil spirit wizard took her by surprise, chopping off several of her snake-like locks. Enraged, she coiled her serpent tail around the evil spirit, but he remained calm, opening his blue eyes to stare at her. Medusa opened her bloodthirsty maw, unleashing her petrifying gaze on him. To her confusion, he was immune to her deadly power. It turned out the evil spirit wizard was no longer flesh and blood. He let out a mocking chuckle, revealing his glowing blue heart. The evil spirit wizard activated a self-destruct mode. After the explosion, Medusa was severely injured. Perseus seized the dropped weapon, and noticing the reflective effect of a shield, instantly had a plan to defeat Medusa. Meanwhile, the general pulled out a dagger and jumped onto a stone pillar. As Medusa was about to attack Perseus, the general used the dagger to cut the pillar, which impaled Medusa's tail. Medusa let out a heart-wrenching scream. The general left Perseus with his final words. Perseus mustered his courage, picked up the shield again, and brandished his sword, ready to strike. He dared not look directly at Medusa, using the shield's reflection to track her movements. Medusa angrily shattered the general's body with her tail. When Medusa was within striking distance, Perseus turned, closed his eyes, and delivered the fatal blow. He successfully cut off Medusa's head. Her body thrashed, but was soon dragged into the abyss by her own tail. Perseus obtained Medusa's head and left the edge of the underworld. Next, he would use Medusa's gaze to defeat the sea monster. Io, waiting outside, let out a sigh of relief when she saw Perseus emerge safely. Suddenly, the puppet king struck from behind, taking her life. Perseus roared in anger, launching an attack on the Puppet King. Alone, he was clearly no match. Soon, his sword was broken. Perseus used the shard to stab the Puppet King in the thigh. Enraged, the Puppet King fought more fiercely, knocking Perseus to the ground. Catching sight of the ancient divine sword on the ground, he didn't reach for it immediately, but glanced at Io. Encouraged by Io, he let go of his obsessions, no longer resisting the god's power. He quickly picked up the divine sword, leaped, and sliced the Puppet King's skull. After a few rounds, he drove the sword through the Puppet King's chest. He rushed to Io's side to check her wounds, but time was running out. After Io spoke her last words, her body turned into golden mist and drifted into the sky. Perseus summoned the black horse with his mind, determined to reach the humans and the princess before the solar eclipse. At that moment, the sea monster raised a huge wave. Speeding toward the castle, the princess was taken to the altar, hung facing the sea, ready to be sacrificed to the sea monster. The kraken's tentacles emerged from the sea, lifting high to destroy buildings and attack fleeing residents. Perseus, riding the winged horse, arrived just as the solar eclipse began. Humanity's fate rested entirely on him. Hades appeared in the sky above the sea, initiating his doomsday plan by sending a swarm of demon bats to intercept Perseus. Perseus weaved through the sea monster's tentacles, searching for an opening. Unexpectedly, the demon bats snatched Medusa's head. A thrilling, high-speed chase was about to unfold. Perseus rode the winged horse into the castle, with dozens of bats intercepting him from behind. He had to retrieve Medusa's head in the shortest time to defeat the sea monster. By then, the colossal sea monster fully emerged, its massive form blotting out the sky. It opened its gaping maw, ready to devour the princess. In the nick of time, Perseus grabbed Medusa's head and charged at the sea monster. He successfully turned the sea monster to stone with Medusa's gaze. Perseus halted the disaster, yet danger persisted as the petrified behemoth collapsed. The princess fell into the sea with it. As Perseus prepared to rescue her, Hades suddenly appeared in front of him, ascending into the sky. Thunder and lightning cracked across the sky. Perseus roared, raising the divine sword toward the heavens. He channeled Zeus's lightning through the sword, striking Hades directly in the heart. Hades was cast back into the underworld. Perseus dived into the water, successfully rescuing the princess ashore. His winged horse found him, splashing water gently on their faces to rouse them. The human world returned to peace. His father, Zeus, appeared as an old man, telling him Hades wouldn't rest after returning to the underworld. He would bide his time to seek revenge on Earth, urging Perseus to join the gods. But Perseus firmly declined, wanting to stay as a fisherman, living a mortal life. As repayment, Zeus used his divine power to resurrect Io. Perseus and Io remain on Earth, starting a new life. I'm a movie enthusiast. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.